Hello and welcome to 25 Cents, our video game podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Nick. Each episode will be making the rounds through our four corners: console, PC, Apple, and tabletop, with a focus on games that are great to play if you've got kids.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on the web at Goodstuff.network. I was enjoying your delivery so much I forgot to hit the music.
we got to get a little countdown to...
Hello, Nick.
Hey, Chris. How's it going?
It's going well. Welcome back. We're into our fall cadence here. We've got our pumpkin spices in, shots in, double vaccinated shots in, ready for a booster shot.
Picked up the we did the flu shot this weekend, so we're ready for that part of the season.
We have to have those arguments now. Too. We actually haven't heard anything up here about the flu shot one yet. I don't know why. I think they're just everyone's exhausted from trying to convince everybody to get the vaccine, but
it's early availability here. I think it was only at a couple of pharmacies, and I don't know. I think flu shot is like 30% every year or something like that in our area. Like, it's pretty. I think mostly only like more vulnerable folks take it, like older folks. Historically, I've always gotten it because, like, I'm going into the office usually, but I figure it doesn't hurt to double up right now.
Exactly. Any sort of sickness is just no fun. So
well, because I mean, if we did somehow get the flu, we would have to, by school rules, like, stay home and isolate, because a lot of the symptoms look a lot like the much worse thing. So
the thing that shall not be named.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's gonna feel like that soon, I think. Yeah. Anyway, on to happier news. Away from COVID corner and into console corner. Oh shoot. We'll edit that out in post.
There we go. That's our traveling news.
We need some more morning zoo sound effects for that.
Even if nobody's listening, at least we're having fun.
Yeah. I mean,
console corner. You beat, air quotes, it says in the notes. You beat Hades?
Yes. I finally beat Hades. So without going into too many spoilers, because there's some story elements that are pretty interesting. Hades is a roguelike, so there is an end to any given run that you can reach. So I did that. But there's still a lot you can do in the game. You can unlock more stuff that's either cosmetic or story. You can, just play the game for fun, obviously, because and you can keep upgrading yourself, or you can start a new roguelike run save over if you want. Kind of a new game plus style. I think I'm going to play it. It's been challenging. I think it took me, it was like 52 runs to get powered up enough that I could make it through the sort of final set of encounters successfully. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think it's a game I'll keep ducking back into. It was definitely one where the power-ups I collected over the course of that particular run is what made it possible to actually win. Like, I didn't get a lot better at the game, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. I definitely had the right combination of they're called boons, from the various gods in the game that made it work. And you can read online about lots of different combinations that work. There's not one way to beat the game. But yeah, it's fun. It feels like a little bit of an achievement. I guess I'm a little overdue compared to when everyone was talking about it last fall, but I still had fun with it, and it feels like I don't finish games so much anymore.
That's a good segue maybe into my my quarterly attempt. When did Breath of the Wild come out? Like probably 2017 or something.
It was not a launch title, but it was soon after, right, for the Switch?
Yeah. Breath of Fire. It's giving me all sorts. I can't quickly find it, so I'll stop. But it's a while, anyways. And so, anyways, it's 2017. It was released March 2017. So, you know what? March 2022. Sorry. Let's say that's my goal for. I'm setting a modest goal. If you don't set goals, you don't achieve anything, right? That's the thing. So, for Breath of the Wild,
put it on your calendar.
Yeah, there's 5 Gorgons. I don't even know the name. Sorry, Breath of the Wild fans. I know it's a much beloved game. I try to remember all the things that I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be doing them. They kind of all blend together. I think I'm trying to. I last night or this weekend I defeated a camel, a large camel. But I partially defeated it. My the struggle I have is with these large puzzle monster things you have to defeat, and it's not like it's overly
Hmm.
complicated. It just I always feel like I can't get zoomed out enough to like get a sense of where the thing is. They show you a little map, but then when I'm actually playing the game, I can't really see where that is in the thing, and I'm old and confused easily, I guess. So, but it was fun. I had my kids watching me as I was trying to ride a walrus sand surfer to defeat the thing. You have to shoot his feet. This is no spoilers. I'm sure everybody's well beyond if 4 years later.
Yeah.
And anyways, I've defeated one. I've defeated an elephant and a camel, and I'm not sure what the other three are yet that are yet to come. But that's where I'm at in my Breath of the Wild update. So if you're out there and you haven't beat a game recently, just know that I'm way behind, way behind on the most popular Switch game ever made, from what I've read.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I've never even picked it up. I think a coworker had it on their Switch that they had brought into the office once a couple years ago, and I like tried to climb a cliff briefly and was like, oh, it looks good. And I'm sure it is a game I would enjoy if I got into it on our Switch, but it's also one that feels like such a time commitment that I'm afraid to even go down that path. I mean, like you've said, you touch it every a couple of months, and
yeah,
and I have other games, whether it's Hades that I had set aside for 8 months or so, or other games on the Switch that I'm not picking up regularly.
yeah, and it is one of those games where it's really fun, especially like the beginning of the game is really fun. Light, there's a very sort of good guardrails to keep you moving along the
Hmm.
right path. But then when the world opens up and it's just like this massive, and luckily there is like magic ways to skip around the world and travel, so you're not like just running. Initially, I didn't realize that, and I was like just literally running around the world for 20 minutes just to get to somewhere, thinking I had to do that the entire game. And that was kind of depressing. But once I figured out how to like leap to
Like
different
the fast
areas,
travel or whatever.
yeah, their mechanism in the game, then it kind of opened things up. So, other Switch news, I'll update folks as in the next quarter here when I pull up Breath of the Wild again.
We expect
next,
the quarterly Breath of the Wild call
yeah,
from
exactly.
Chris.
The Switch added Bluetooth ability, which Bluetooth headphone support, right? So
Yes.
I haven't tried it yet, but one funny thing I noticed someone else commenting, I forget where I saw this, but it was just the idea that they didn't do anything different hardware wise. It was just a software update. And so the Switch has had Bluetooth support hardware wise since the beginning. It just took them 4+ years to put it out,
Yeah.
which feels really bizarre. Like, I mean, I'm not complaining. Like, it doesn't change the Switch for me. I bought it anyways. It wasn't like I was, waiting to buy it for Bluetooth headphone support. But yeah, it's. I know you know software development more than I do, but that feels
Yeah,
really
I,
bizarre.
I can speculate it in a couple of ways. So I can see it from a couple of ways. So one of the big caveats with it, right, is that with Bluetooth audio enabled, whatever chipset they're using, you can only use two wireless controllers as opposed to the normal four. So they're using some of the
Oh,
channels that would
gotcha.
normally be reserved for controller data for the audio. So I could imagine, a big back and forth internally being like, is this worth the downsides, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're using Bluetooth audio for yourself, you're probably playing in handheld mode or, single player, single controller. So it seems like an okay trade-off. It's also the case that an operating system change, especially something that involves like lower level firmware, like talking to the hardware, that's going to be a change you're going to be really conservative about, making sure that you've got it right, in terms of testing. Now, testing to support basically two, soon to be three models of Switch is relatively easy, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
have the kind of hardware variability. You're not trying to support, 8 models of iPhone, let alone team models of Windows PC or build your own, right? Like so it's a different world in that regard. It's much more constrained. But yeah, I can see why they'd be a little conservative about it. I've tried it with my AirPods. Um, and yeah, I mean the pairing was a little, it didn't quite seem to detect them at first, or I was in the wrong menu mode with the AirPods case being open for pairing or something. But I finally got them paired. And then Yeah, I mean, I had audio. There seemed to be a brief blip when I first launched a game where it disconnected and then reconnected. I don't know if that's a consistent issue. I've just run into it the once, or that maybe it's just like an initial setup problem. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely more convenient than me trying to dig up the uh, random mini plug headphones, especially as I've gone into Bluetooth and wireless for my phones and my
Yeah,
primary
everything
device, and
else.
switching between phone and computer with Bluetooth. I don't always know where a random set of earbuds or headphones are.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's definitely more convenient to be able to just like grab the switch and hook it to the little earbuds I already have.
Is it? I'm just anticipating fights with my kids. So is it one headphone device and then you have to unpair, or can you like grab whatever one sort of connects first, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I don't have the Switch handy, but there was once I paired mine, they show up in the list, and there's still a plus button.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
that's good.
I think we'd probably have to dig into the Nintendo support documents to see what the limitations are.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I imagine it's implementing the usual Bluetooth profile. Oh, up to 10 devices can be saved on a Switch system.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's
But
that's more than
it's
enough.
audio only, or sorry, output only. No microphone support.
Yeah, that's the other weird one. So the Switch itself has a mic on it, though, right? Like, I'm sure I've heard my
I
kids shouting at each other
think
through the
so.
Switch.
Yeah, and some of the like funky like Labo stuff is mic based, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've played Fortnite with my son, and he's shouted at me on the Switch. So
Yeah.
we don't always shout at each other. I should qualify
Right.
that, but when Fortnite happens, we often do. Um, Speaking of switching, actually, the Xbox now just controller, they just updated a firmware update for it that allows for quick switching, where if you can double tap the connect button and kind of switch through devices. I haven't actually updated our controllers. We actually have 5 Xbox controllers in our house somehow now, and so I haven't gone through and updated all of them yet.
That sounds like a bit of a chore.
Yeah, it's like I need an IT support team here to manage between the iOS updates that happen, which we'll talk about, and TV updates and stuff, and then yeah, Xbox controller updates. There's a lot of devices getting updated this week, I guess. So, but this is like a huge bonus for me, I think, and for us because using the Apple TV with this controller now becomes much more quicker,
Mm,
easier. Grab a controller, just double tap, and you're connected in theory. I'll report back on how it actually works, but to quickly play a game of whatever, any game basically that now is on Apple TV, on Apple Arcade, with a controller, which is required, is much easier. And yeah, you can sit on the couch and still play the game. So you ran into a
right.
snag though, as far as standalone Xbox controller owner, right?
Well, right. So I have the one Xbox controller, which we use with Apple TV or Macs, and it looks like the firmware update is only if you have an Xbox or PC. So what I'm going to
Wah,
try to
wah.
do before I retire the old iMac that does have a Windows partition on it
Oh,
is
there
I'll
you
try
go.
boot into Windows and see if it's just presumably it's just a software thing. Although I suppose I could also run Windows inside a VM on an Intel machine. But yeah, and I'll see if I can update it that way, but I don't know if I need the right kind of USB cable to do it. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure
Yeah,
what all will be involved, but I'll try it and report back. And I've definitely run into the switching downside, right? I basically have to like kind of go into pairing again sometimes, not all the time, to switch between like one of the Macs and the Apple TV to get its pairing sorted.
yeah. It's a very first world problem, but definitely is still
Yes.
annoying. And
Yes.
so, yeah, worst case scenario, I guess you can just mail it off to me and I'll update it and then mail it back to you. That's probably.
Well, the one downside of that is that international shipping
Yeah,
at the border,
probably
customs
could just buy
declarations
a
might be a little
new
painful.
new controller for the the cost. All right,
Yeah,
let's move on.
I have to find one with if the box says the firmware's been updated, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's move on to PC corner.
Well, we're gonna need a big truck
Yeah,
to deliver the IKEA gaming collection.
this is awesome. Okay.
So this is pretty wild. So Republic of Gamers, which is an Asus brand of various gaming gear, peripherals, whatnot, is partnering with IKEA for an entire uh, primarily PC gamer. furniture line. So yes, there will be the
Can you do them?
Uppspel, the Lönespelare, the Matchspel, the Gruppspel, the Utespelare, and the Huvudspelare. So I assume spell is like Spiele game. Uh, I'm only 1/16 Swedish, so I can't speak to this very well. Um, but yeah, I mean it's very much that usual. Their promo image so far is very much that usual kind of PC gamer black and red, lots of lighting
Hmm.
stuff. But I mean, I've had IKEA desks and chairs over the years that have been pretty good, and if they're just kind of throwing a little bit of a game style on top of that, I imagine they will be um, a popular one,
Yeah.
um, and probably the price will be a little more accessible than the average. I know some of those game chairs, like the really high back performance chairs can get pretty expensive. Maybe not quite as fancy as a Herman Miller office chair or something, but they're up there.
Oh, I guess we don't have them
Um,
here in Canada yet. So all I get is some seashell soap containers right now.
yeah, it says launched globally at IKEA stores from October 2021.
Oh,
So
okay.
they should show up for you next month
Yeah.
at IKEA Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I don't know what it's like in your world with IKEA, just in turn, not just gaming, but like it, it felt like when I was growing up, anyways, IKEA was the thing that you bought when you're in your 20s and 30s, and then you kind of aged out of it. And they've managed to like somehow keep going because you would presumably, get higher quality, less particle board based, whatever furniture,
Right.
as you could afford it and things like that. But I'm impressed that IKEA's hung on. And obviously something like this is going to appeal to a whole bunch of people. They have actually some really good, what was it, AirPlay speaker lights and lamps and things they put out a couple of years ago. So they're
Yeah.
at least like dipping their toes into the technology world. I feel like in
They've
interesting
got a
ways.
whole smart home hub line. I don't think it's on the newer compatibility with like Thread and Matter, right? But
Right.
it's uh I've heard positive reviews out of it. I haven't set it up. And yeah, the sort of aging or maturing of IKEA furniture is something we've experienced. Right, like when we first got married, a lot of our stuff was IKEA. And actually, when I first moved out on my own, I actually arranged for an IKEA, or no, I guess I had the reload truck from work grab unbuilt IKEA furniture in Minnesota when I was moving out of my parents' house and deliver it along with the rest of my boxes to my new place in Boston at the time. And yeah, so I had like the desk and shelves and bed and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, my wife and I over time, like we certainly had a wide variety of IKEA shelving. One of our places we did start upgrading into the solid wood IKEA
Yeah.
instead of the like you said, the particle board. Which tends to be a little more expensive, and actually some of their stuff is pretty pricey, high end. It's like comparable to I don't know what another fancy, maybe like a Crate and Barrel type prices, a higher end furniture store for some of their lines. But yeah, I mean, we still have an IKEA bed frame that's pretty simple. I mean, it's pine, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't. It's pretty basic, but it supports a good mattress. So there's other pieces of furniture where we've upgraded a little bit over the years into something a little nicer maybe, or more comfortable. But at the same time, we've moved around a lot, so it's actually been relatively convenient to have things where the cost up front doesn't feel like quite a hit on the pocketbook, or you can resell it easily, or if it gets beat up in the move, you don't care quite as much as some heirloom type
Yeah.
piece, grandma's couch or whatever.
That's actually the one funny thing. I think the more often we've moved a bunch of times too, we're just in the same city, but like IKEA furniture generally does not do well with moves because the Allen wrench thingies, whatever those are called, to like tie them together. Tie them together. You can tell I construct things a lot. Anyways, kind of tend to wear down as you like disassemble and then reassemble, and like they don't really
Yeah.
hold up over time. Anyways, this is not IKEA corner, so let's keep moving. Let's go over to Apple corner.
Anyway, I don't think I'm going to be picking up any gamer furniture, but
Yeah.
it's nice to see there's an option.
Hey, if the Good Stuff Twitch channel takes off here and we're all of a sudden got 10,000 people tuning in, we expect all hosts to upgrade. with
Hey,
sponsored
if
material.
I can expense it
Yeah,
to the good stuff accounts, Chris, I will.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I actually borrowed an office chair from work for work from home, so
nice.
that's what I'm currently rocking.
They should hand out some Twitch swag through the various channels there and like promote it. You'd think a little more, but anyways,
I
that's a
think I
whole
can
other
mail you.
discussion.
I have some stickers. I can mail you a Twitch sticker. That's about the extent of the swag I've got.
So you got some. Speaking of swag, sort of, not really. The the Apple event happened just
Yes.
actually. Where are we here? A week ago now? No,
Yeah. Yeah. It
right?
was
Yeah,
last Tuesday.
last Tuesday. Yeah, it's all blending together here. But new watch, new iPhone, iPad Mini that was announced. Nothing, like you said, nothing much about iOS 15 directly, but that was released yesterday out into the world. So, what did you pick up anything or pre-order anything from your Apple Vault?
Yeah, so there was also the sort of standard base iPad. I think it's the iPad ninth generation was
Mm-hmm.
also updated, and that's more the kind of the school grade one. But my mother-in-law is opting to upgrade her iPad. She had a pretty old, I think it was the first iPad Pro or whichever the first one was that could use the pencil. And it's definitely a device that has gotten a little slower with iOS updates and feature updates over time relative to its hardware capabilities. Um, so she's doing the trade in. We are not updating the family iPad, although the mini looks really nice. I remember we right when my son was born, we had minis as like our reading and general device, and that was a really nice form factor. I know my one of my old roommates is talking about he really wants the mini as sort of his like e-reader media handheld game device, and he has a preschooler right now, so it seems like the good device there.
Yeah, I
But
would
yeah,
I would go for the mini in a heartbeat. It feels like it's just that little bit too like I think up here in Canada it was at 699 I want to say, or maybe 599
okay,
600, and it
yeah,
feels like if it was sub 500, which I mean whatever, they're they gotta pay for their bills and stuff at Apple and all their stuff, keep their profit margin.
I think
But
they still have a healthy margin in there.
yeah, it does feel like if it was like in that $500 range, it would be like, oh yeah, let's do it. Like that's a fun. It's expensive, but it's a fun, worthwhile thing that I would use a bunch here for personal stuff. But then the kids, and even like Apple Arcade or whatever and stuff like that. But
Right.
yeah, at the price it's at, it feels a little bit too dear to justify.
Well, and I think the interesting thing is the Mini used to be kind of the bottom of the market, and now it's actually positioned. It got a bunch of the newer, higher end features and form factor of the iPad
Yeah.
Pro from last year, and so it's actually more the mid. It's a smaller device, but it's the middle of the range. Whereas that entry level iPad is sort of where you start. It still has a home button with Touch ID and not as many of the screen technology stuff. But yeah, as we kind of expected, that as we discussed the last episode when the event was announced, there wasn't a lot of talk about Apple Arcade or services or games. And in fact, they really didn't even talk about iOS 15 features much at all, other than the sort of camera and photo related ones. Um, I am picking up or pre-ordered an iPhone 13 Pro. So my current phone is 3 years old, and it one thing that's interesting. So the battery is definitely lagging. So I could just replace that, but I like the camera upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
3 years is the longer end. Certainly, certainly the tech addict world. But what's interesting is I think this is the first iPhone I have had. Sorry, the 10s that I currently have is the first one I've had that after 2 to 3 years has not felt like it's slowing down. So like the hardware advancement curve and what they're trying to do with the software and graphics is staying more aligned over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like the 10s I'll do the trade in and someone will get it refurbed presumably. It's a device that's still usable, still updatable. Whereas if I look back to how like my 6S Plus felt after 3 years, or I think I had a 4S after 2 years, and those especially as some of the iOS updates came out and we're adding all these cloud syncing features and background stuff, just felt more and more sluggish and unresponsive as new features were added. Whereas my current phone actually has felt fine. So mostly I'm just looking for the camera upgrade, the hardware upgrade. And then the one feature they made a big deal out of is the ProMotion display. So this I
Mm-hmm.
think came to the iPad Pro last year, and is now in the phones. And this was the only part in the whole event where they talked about games, because they were talking about how the OS will dynamically bump the screen refresh rate up to 120 hertz while you're playing a game for really, really smooth, responsive graphics. But then when you're just like scrolling through a document or looking at a static picture, it can drop it down to as low as I think 10 hertz, which saves on battery, and just exercises the hardware a little bit less when it doesn't need to. So that variable refresh rate is a pretty interesting feature.
Yeah, and that's actually
Um,
would be really handy, I guess, to have that in your phone, like you said, for battery life especially. And then if you're doing, even if you're using it like I am for where it's plugged in or whatever, you're playing a game or watching video, and having it
right,
bump that up is impressive that they can do that. And especially again, such a small device that fits in your pocket is always the crazy thing to me. And yeah, the like you're talking about the technology curve or whatever, and upgrades and stuff year over year. I think Apple often gets knocked for not having done better at making the new phone like so much more attractive or whatever. And I think it seems like they're okay now with like the 2 to 3 year life cycle for most normal people outside of the
yes,
tech world. And that's even my son has a 7, I think it is, and my wife has an 8. I have an 11, and they're like there's zero other than my son being tuned into some of the Apple stuff and like aware of what's coming or why some of
right,
the new stuff is there. He uses it daily. He never is like, oh, I'm waiting for whatever. I'm still, why isn't this whatever, and like, can I get a new one or whatever? And like, he doesn't have any of that. The only ones who are complaining right now at this point is like my other son has a 6S, I want to say, and our daughter has
right,
5 or something, I think. And so the battery dies in 10 minutes. Like that's the biggest thing.
right.
And then they don't have some of the new
Well, and
features.
and what I think iOS 15 only goes down to the 6S. I want to say is what I when I checked recently.
Yeah. Yeah. So they don't get, luckily, the other two aren't aware of any of the features or they're not paying attention to that stuff right now,
Right.
whereas the oldest is aware of it. And so now he's like, oh, I need to share FaceTime video or whatever with somebody. And even though he's never done it or probably won't, but
Well, it's new, and that's what's important.
yeah.
So yeah, so iOS 15. I mean, there's a ton of new features. A couple things that are interesting, but in terms of game features, there's a couple of areas, and I forget if it was in the App Store or via
The
a push
story.
notification from the App Store. There was a story about the new game features, or maybe it was the Tips app. I leave a lot of these notifications on because they're infrequent enough that they don't bother me. But there's some interesting kind of like, oh, so what is Apple pushing right onto my device? So they mentioned three areas. So one is highlights videos. So you can basically while you're playing a game, your device will keep a 15-second video buffer just running continuously in the background, and then you hit a button and it'll save that to your photo library, the last 15 seconds. So basically you're playing, there's just this continuous buffer. You do something cool, you hit a button on your controller right then, and it'll save to your photo library whatever the current 15-second buffer was, so you can get like a cool I don't know, kill shot or whatever you're recording.
Yeah.
And my understanding is this is a pretty common feature on consoles. I don't know if you've used this on like
Yeah.
Xbox or
My
whatever.
son has an Instagram account that he just posts highlights from
Okay.
Fortnite and hockey, basically. And so using that, it's just like hit a button, shares it to Xbox in the cloud, and then he can download it to his phone and
Hmm.
publish it. It's a really smart thing, and it's impressive that Apple is at least playing along with that idea to allow
Right.
for quick sharing of stuff like this, because yeah, the kids are using it
Yeah, and
for
I
sure.
think you could do it before with some of the third party, like with the way screen sharing worked and like how you could stream to like Twitch from your phone via the screen
Yeah,
share or screen recording. But now this feature is just built in the OS, and you can bind it to a button on your controller if you have a paired Bluetooth controller. So
yeah,
again, it seems like kind of tiptoeing into those features that are more like, hey, we're a real game console that just
quote
happens to
unquote.
be mostly played on a phone.
Yeah,
Um, the other one is so the new focus features. So this is sort of the next generation combination of like do not disturb and bedtime. But one of the modes that is available by default, or sort of pre-configured, is game focus. And so that, I mean, it makes sense. It's basically a way to kind of turn down your notification volume while you're playing. And I've certainly run into that with certain games where notification will roll in from the top right in an area that you're actively using as part of gameplay, right?
Yeah.
Because most games are full screen. So that's a nice thing, and you can actually set it to auto activate with certain apps. So basically, while you're in a game, you will automatically be in this mode with reduced notifications. Um, so yeah, I mean it's a tiny little OS level feature, but if you think of the annoyance you might have getting interrupted right as you're trying to like land that combo or whatever in some game, especially these games that are more timing oriented, I can see the appeal. So I'll
Yeah.
probably get that set up.
Especially because you don't like if you think of like the Switch or Xbox, like it's a very focused. You're playing Breath of the Wild
Right,
right now. There's not like
it's a game only device
yeah, yeah,
primarily.
and it would be it does kind of take you out of it when you get an email notification or whatever that comes through as you're trying to like play NBA 2K21 or whatever whatever game it might be. And so that's I find the focus thing just not just in terms of our arcade, but it's like a really fiddly thing now to like manage. And I wonder how many
Yes, a little
people,
bit.
like the average person anyways, using it. I can see my parents sort of like turning it on and not realizing what they've done. And not just because my parents aren't technical, I just mean like it is actually a complicated sort of system that you're trying to set up for yourself. And the phone, I think, kind of default, or the iOS defaults to trusting that you know what you're doing with this. And so you could potentially kind of lock out a bunch of notifications that
Right.
you might want to actually have. And there's guardrails and stuff to like help you a bit along the way. But I can see a lot more people trying it out and then turning it off because they just get frustrated trying to like
Yeah.
micromanage every single level of
Yeah, I mean,
gaming.
as with any feature, right? Like the more complicated you make it, the more options you give to power users, the harder it is to use, right? And of course, Apple really tries to emphasize the story that they're the easy to use OS. So there's like an onboarding tutorial that pops up. I forget where I got prompted for that after updating the OS. Something was like, "Hey, go set up your focus settings." Um, the do not disturb and bedtime ones are enabled by default. Possibly the bedtime one is only enabled because I previously had the bedtime features set up
Yeah, me
on
too.
iOS 14.
Yeah.
So it migrated my settings into the new focus features. But there's like a personal and work placeholder that were there but not configured. And then of course, if you go in to add different focus modes, gaming was one of the options there. Yeah, I think I need to kind of spend some time with it, figure out exactly how I would change it from where I basically have it now, which is uh, people in my immediate family can punch through, in off hours, and I get the notification. Pretty much everything else I don't. Um, so that's a way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's kind of like a tutorial, and it's really obvious. There's like this weird, icon on your lock screen that shows up to indicate that you're in one of these modes. And I think by default, maybe it wasn't default, but you can even set it where in messages it will tell people that you're in one of these modes. So if a relative who's struggling with this is messaging you, you can see in your messages thread that they're currently in one of these do not disturb or whatever focus modes. So you could then potentially like help them through another channel to get that turned off because
Yeah.
you have that visibility.
Yeah, it's kind of like the do not disturb when you're driving mode that automatically clicks through or shows like if you're driving, then it sends
Right.
the recent people messages. And I think that's one I thought a lot more people would be using, and I rarely see anybody sending like if I text them
Yeah.
and I know they're driving.
My
If
my dad
anything,
has that enabled.
yeah,
So when his phone is in the car, I'll get that auto reply text from him every once in a while because obviously I'll text him without realizing he's driving somewhere.
yeah. My parents are on the other side of like not wanting to disappoint anybody that they will like pull over and quickly text you back and then keep going. I'm like, it's like, and I'm just like, what are you doing this weekend or whatever? Like, it's just a very
Right.
nothing
Right.
text.
I've noticed that a little bit generationally with like my peers versus my parents is they're more likely to jump onto a reply immediately or even to say like, oh, I'm busy right now, I can't, like,
Yeah,
well, it's texting, you can just get back to me whenever you are available. I wasn't expecting a response.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. There is one last games feature in iOS 15 that I wanted to mention, which is sort of the return of Game Center. So obviously Game Center has been there as sort of the behind the scenes uh, tracking of achievements and high scores and whatnot for a while, once since they retired the Greenfelt Game Center app many versions ago. But now there are two Game Center widgets you can place on the home screen. So I have some set up here, so I can see. I can see. Let me hold up for the camera.
Oh yeah, go
So I
ahead.
can see recent games played by friends. You've been bumped off right now.
Oh
You were
shit.
on here playing Sping,
Oh,
but got my friend Corey from a Starting Point podcast is playing something called Egg Inc. Listener Andrew is playing Word Web, and another friend from college is playing Slay the Spire. Um, and then there's another widget mode, which is a continue playing, and it gives you four. Well, it depends on the size of the widget. It gives you a couple of buttons to jump back into your recent games,
oh yeah,
um, which is interesting. I think mostly I get back into recent games through either the fast app switching gesture or Siri search, but I'm going to leave that on for a while, see if I use it. Especially as I've tried to kind of bury more games in the app library since iOS 14.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I noticed that's like the way. That's another thing that like some people are really into the widgets, and other people don't use them at all. Like my
mhm.
son, my oldest, loves like his whole phone is set up with widgets everywhere,
Right.
and I kind of like use them on the second, third, or fourth screen of my phone. I don't use them that much on the home screen, the main screen that I look at. But I definitely do appreciate even like the photo widget, which was there in iOS 14, and it's maybe been slightly improved. But photos widget, which shows you like a random memory, it's kind of like a nice little. You swipe over and you get like a nice little warm fuzzy of a photo memory. Generally pretty good. Like the odd time, like today, actually my sister's birthday today. Happy birthday, Andrea. I know you don't listen, but anyways, my watch showed me with the new iOS or watch OS update. Anyways, it seemed to have a bit better photo prompting, and it picked out a random photo of her because it knows it's her birthday. She's in my contacts, and
Hmm.
happened to pick like a photo where she was like looking really annoyed at the at the screen or at the whatever. And so it was kind of this little like guilt trip of like, aren't you going to wish me a happy birthday?
Right.
Self photo or whatever. So, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it's pretty good.
I've noticed that sometimes with Siri, like I'll have already texted one of my relatives to wish them a happy birthday, and then Siri sends me this like, "You should call this person today," and it's like, well, okay, you're monitoring everything I do on my device. How do you not know that I've already told them happy birthday?
Yeah, exactly. Technically, you haven't phoned them. That's what it's trying to like say.
Yes. Yeah.
Its
Well,
voice is
that's
important, Nick.
yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, but also it prompts me very early in the morning, and a phone call would generally
Yeah.
involve the small person in my household joining in. Um,
uh,
anyway,
I
yeah,
digress.
so yeah, I think that kind of wraps on Apple event and iOS updates. I guess the only other thing is, so there was a scramble last week to get iOS 14.8 out because of a significant security
Yeah.
vulnerability 0 day in messages. Um, iOS 15 also includes additional protections against this. So yeah, that's definitely a reason to update, even if you don't care about new widgets and other features. Um, it's it is a vulnerability that so far was only used to target people from uh, government agencies doing things right, but around the world. But once it's out in the wild, obviously. Various malicious actors, hackers, and whatnot could start to use it to try and uh, get you to do things if you haven't updated your device. And actually, I've had an uptick in spam trying to look like my mobile provider. So I'll get a text
Mm,
saying like, "Your AT&T bill is ready," and it's not from the AT&T number I have in my contacts, and it's the wrong time of month, and it's got some link that goes to a domain that kind of looks like it might be an AT&T domain, but obviously isn't. I mean, obviously don't go to them, but
yeah.
with the particular vulnerability, if you haven't patched your phone, you're at risk of getting these drive-by texts that then give them access to your device. So make sure to update.
Yeah, it's worth and iPad as well. By the way, too is basically anything with messages. Technically, I think, but
Yes.
like because it's even for there's a security update for Mac OS, but I think the vulnerability is to the phone. But anyways,
Yeah.
messages as at the core. So you had tagged Zookeeper World. Had you tried this with?
Yeah. Yeah, so this was a new release, I think, in the last week or two on Apple Arcade. It's a kind of match three style puzzle game. You're lining up little animals, and then there's this whole little 3D story where, as you unlock each level and get the coins and whatnot, you start upgrading your zoo, and people are like walking around and congratulating your zoo and everything. It's an interesting puzzle game. It's very much in the match three genre. But this is that category of game where, like, I don't. There's sort of two halves to the game. There's the, like, tending your little zoo, and then there's a puzzle game, and I want those to be separate game experiences, at least for me. So this particular game is not for me. Like, if I want to do match three, I just want to be iterating and playing levels over and over again. I don't want to in between have to go and, like, do quests and unlock the lion and build things and tend to my zoo, right? That
Yeah.
that doesn't interest me. Or I'm in the mood for a full on, like, simulation game where I don't want just like casual zoo. I want to be budgeting my lion meat food diet and full Sim City
Yeah, like
or
ticket
I don't know,
prices
what was
and
it, Dinosaur Park Tycoon, or
yeah.
any of those. Yeah, so two very different genres for games. um, there's been a style, I think, with where you kind of do this puzzle game that there's also a story to it, and that's just not as much for me. But they're wildly popular outside of Apple Arcade, usually with a lot of sketchy in-app purchase stuff going on, to keep you unlocking. But obviously, this one has that feel, but without any of that risk. Again, like we always say about Apple Arcade. So if
And
this
well
is your
designed, like mechanics,
genre,
play mechanics and buttons and controls are
yeah,
decent.
it's a solid match three. The puzzles get more and more complex as you go along. I've played the first, I don't know, 20 or so levels. So you have to do more combos. You get the kind of the dopamine hit of lining up at the end of the level, the, like, super combo kind of Candy Crush style where they clear the board with tons of animations and explosions. The graphics are a little bit like voxel style, almost. Kind of this like, or like Minecraft, maybe this, like, low poly, kind of cartoonish look. But it's cute. It seems like a decent game. Just not quite for me. It's not quite the genre mashup for me. So
Yeah,
I don't think I'll go back to it.
which is why you keep going back to Grindstone.
Yes, yeah. So I don't know. Have you been? Do you go back to grind so much at all?
I haven't yet. I keep this actually going back to the controller thing is like I keep wanting to try it on the Apple TV, and then I get distracted
Oh,
watching something or whatever, just to
yeah.
see how it feels on a big TV, big smashing noises and whatever, all the animations and stuff, and see how it feels to play that kind of game on the TV versus my phone, which is where the other place. Which, like, it feels like it's a very portable, waiting in line somewhere and quickly play a level or whatever kind of
Yes.
game, or on the bus or whatever. But yeah, I keep meaning to go try it on the TV and haven't. So I'll try and try that out before next time. But you've been going back to it again.
Yeah. So I haven't been playing it as much, although it. So I think I have a few unlock or new levels that have unlocked that I want to go and clear, and they've added more, like, daily modes and other features and new stuff you can get. So I should unlock that all again. But um, when my son has screen time, he's been really enjoying it on the iPad, and kind of starting to get into the slightly harder levels
Mm.
and into the sort of planning aspect of it, where you have to really be careful about your paths as you set up your grinds. But then the one, like, menu theme or something got stuck in his head, and he kept humming it all the time. So I was like, all right, we're listening to the soundtrack, which is on Apple Music. There's two volumes,
Oh, nice.
by Sam somebody. I have to look at it. But yeah, it's a really, like, good, like, kind of chill game soundtrack with a little bit of a I'm not sure exactly what the vibe, like, it's a little bit of a retro vibe, but it's also got this kind of, like, martial aspect to it. It sounds like something from, I don't know, Holst the Planets, or some older classical music kind of mixed in. So yeah, it's a good listen if you just want kind of some background music. And I like that a lot of the game soundtrack releases are on Apple Music. You can just jump over really easily.
Yeah, Sam Webster
Um,
is the artist to look for if you're
yeah,
having trouble
thank you,
finding it
Sam
that way.
Webster. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So, and obviously, I think we've kind of gotten the sense in terms of what games get promoted. Like, Grindstone was basically a launch title on Arcade. Arcade's been out now just about 2 years, and it's one that I still see showing up in the top games list. So there's something about that one that is particularly sticky. They've obviously gotten the funding and audience to keep updating it. Whereas, a lot of the other arcade games, they're still there in the library. You can go, play them while your subscription is active, but they don't have that same grab for whatever reason as a game like Grindstone does.
Yeah, for for a lot of folks, I wonder if like Grindstone is their $5 Apple Arcade game that they're just actually
Right.
subscribed to.
It's actually a Grindstone subscription.
World of Warcraft now Grindstone, for $5 or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, feels
Yeah.
funny, but it is what it is. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly putting in the investment in new games, but yeah, other than like Good Sudoku Plus and Grindstone, there's not a ton that I'm going back to, but it is nice to have the subscription built into our Apple One plan and be able to try all these games,
yeah,
which I like, kind of see what's out there, especially in the more indie developer world.
yeah, that's how they get you. Like the good and bad of that bundling stuff is you stop thinking
Right.
about what the cost is of individual things, but then suddenly you're paying $30 a month to Apple for stuff you kind of sort of use, but don't really need all of. And yeah, but I think overall, still, it feels like a net positive, at least for our family, anyways. Too, it seems like for yours
Yeah.
as well. So, do we have time for tabletop corner? Are you where are we at?
Yeah, I don't think there's much to say here. So I don't know, has your family been kind of back to the card games at all, or is school keeping everyone busy?
Sorry, we needed some sort of sound.
Well, yeah, tabletop.
Blasted you.
We need like a dice roll maybe.
Yeah. I know. What's
Um,
There's nothing
Burr,
appropriate
burr,
right now.
burr.
Anyways, we have not actually played much tabletops the last couple of weeks. Tabletop gaming. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting because I often forget. And then after we finish recording, I realize, oh yeah, actually they've been playing whatever for the last every day. But no, I think between school and activities that other somewhat activities that are starting up, there hasn't been a lot of time for gaming actually, and kind of like packing in our activities externally before winter and or lockdown, whatever comes first or both.
Right.
Happens here in apparently one of the worst places in the world for COVID stuff right now. Apparently, so yeah. What I see D&D musical, and I'm
Well, yeah. So
intrigued.
this one jumped out at me in the news. So D&D celebration is this weekend. So there's this general trend, right, where people don't go to industry conferences anymore. Brands don't go to industry conferences anymore. Everyone just streams their own event, right? So D&D celebration is this coming weekend, I believe. And on Saturday at 4 Pacific, a D&D musical will debut. I am curious, and among other things, it stars Anthony Rapp, who was in the original run of Rent back in the '90s, and is currently starring on Star Trek Discovery, which is so that's kind of where I've been following his current work. But yeah, and a couple of other experienced either D&D or musical actors. Obviously, Let's Play podcasts are a big deal right now in the D&D world.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm curious. I might. I don't know that we'll sit and watch it live, but yeah, I'll have to try and find a recording of it because I'm really curious how that's going to turn out. I mean, I remember the Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out in the '90s was just notoriously terrible. I think I saw it in theaters. Uh, as someone who was actively playing at the time. But yeah, it's fun to see how much it's part of the game culture right now. Obviously, there's no shortage of really great indie RPGs right now as well, with different rules and different worlds. But the overall D&D universe that Wizards of the Coast has put together is as the certainly the dominant force in the industry, and so they get things like musicals that are official and not fan made, right?
yeah.
Which is pretty wild.
Why not?
Yeah,
Cool. And this you have Ingenious Challenges as a
yeah. So
game
this
you
is a
play.
game we've had for a while. We were just going back to it. Oh, hey, Big Sur just wants to interrupt my.
Speaking of
There's an software update.
focus,
Just wants to pop up right now.
yeah,
I need to adjust those settings. Yeah. So Ingenious Challenges. So there's an older board game called Ingenious. This is by Rainier Knizia, who's of Settlers fame, I think. Right. But challenges there's sort of three modes. There's a dice mode, there's a card mode, and there's a tile mode, and it's different. There's six sets of colors and symbols, and you're basically kind of doing matching and grabbing to not really make sets, but try to like earn points by getting the most of a particular color. We usually play the tile one. And there's kind of this, I don't know if you've played like Can't Stop or other games like this, but there's basically like, ooh, should I draw another tile? And if I, get if I don't match what's in the middle of the table, or I overmatch something in my pile, then everything goes away and I sweep to the middle and I get no points. Or do I stop now, stand pat, and score a few points with what I have instead of keep going? So there's kind of that fun like risk taking element to it. There's definitely a fair bit of luck, right? Like, if the player to your right whiffs and sets up 3 or 4 tiles of a color that you need, well, now you're set and way ahead, right? So there's sort of that element to it. But yeah, it's a fun one, and it's nice that it's 3 games in one in a little box.
And they're not connected like the 3 different games. It's just like you'd play one or the other, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that connects them is the same symbols. There's some similar rules, but yeah, you can't play them at the same time.
It's not like yeah. Can I just say, I don't know if you're watching the Twitch stream out there. If you ever do, we do stream this live Tuesday mornings when we record, and then it publishes on Thursday to the audio podcast stream. In the screenshots from Board Game Geek, or photos, I guess people have submitted. Can you just, if you're sending in your photos of your board game play, can you try and remove the toilet paper roll from the table before you send it in? I think that's what that is.
Go in.
I don't know.
Yeah. It looks like maybe they were cleaning their table because there's like paint in the background.
I mean,
it's also multiple beverages. I don't know.
It's weird. To each their own.
Yeah.
I don't want to judge how you play games and whether your house is clean or not. That's not. It's kind of like just like before you take photos of your house for real estate, just flush the toilet. Like, it's not that having a toilet that's not flushed is bad, but if you're going to show off a picture of your house, flush the toilet. That's all. Anyway.
Yeah, otherwise you'll end up on one of those Twitter accounts of real estate listing disasters, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Yes, the world of user submitted photos contains multitudes.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap up. So if you've been playing games, board games, video games, whatever it is that you've been playing lately, and as you sort of prep into fall maybe, or anticipate hunkering down because of the thing that shall not be named, other than the fact that we named it a couple times, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. Twitter.com/25C Arcade is where you can reach the official account of the show. But then I'm iChris on Twitter. You can find me there. We really appreciate you listening to 25 Cents, our video game podcast.
And you can find me on Twitter now with updated user profile photo, and most everywhere else as Ultra Nerd. That's NURD.
And you can find 25 Cents wherever you listen to podcasts, of course, most places anyways. And be sure to check out the Good Stuff Patreon, patreon.com/goodstuff. Join us in the Discord. See you later.
Bye.